the teacher sounds like she reported it as soon as she could conceive what could have been going on at home, and nobody did anything about it. And that is curious to me, that if she did report this a year ago, what part of the system failed that kid to not look into it, or to not, take this step a lot sooner. Muchachos y muchachas. Okay, so this is a little bit of a follow-up of my previous video that I did on the Bibb County arrest of 7 adults. There were at least 10 children that were discovered to have been abused. There was a concrete underground bunker, and the unimaginable things you could ever think that happened to these kids. And recently, some of you who have been following me on social media know that I run another account called The Daily Traffic, where I share a lot of these headlines of exploitation. And there was a while there where I stopped and I took a break because number one, life got crazy, and then number two, it's a huge responsibility to follow these headlines and to report them. And so I started reposting again. And for those that follow the account, you've taken notice already. And what happens when you follow these headlines is that you start noticing trends. And there is a very scary trend that it was at one point more talked about in a conspiratorial sense, and that is the content in which is produced of children where they are being really, really hurt. And I was really taken back when I learned of 2 headlines. Number one, the Bibb County one that I just talked about, and I talked about in another video. And then there was another case that was reported by the DOJ. And a lot of people are not putting these things together, and I wouldn't expect people to if they're not looking at these headlines every single day. But I came across this additional headline, and I thought that this was something worth talking about. On top of this, I also have another update to the Bibb County, situation in Alabama. There was a former teacher of one of the children, or the thought about children, that got rescued from this horrible situation, underground bunker, where they were being abused. And the teacher had something to say about what she reported before. And so this makes me question if this is also a system issue that failed these kids. Okay, so let's take a look first at this thing, and let me kind of transpire through my thoughts of why I'm even, going through this piece with you guys. This is crazy. Okay, this report is crazy. Let me just see how that shows up for you guys. Zoom in just a tad. All right, so Colorado man pleads guilty to doing horrible things to a minor and possessing things of material, the bad material. So let me jump into this. This was reported by the DOJ. And what district is this? I'm sure this will report the district in here somewhere. So Colorado man pleaded guilty, and this was reported on the 23rd of July, to exploiting a minor and possessing particular pieces of material, CSAM. According to court documents, Wesley Chambers, who is 34, Fort Collins, abused a minor, and this happened for years, plural, once again, and recorded the abuse, which means that this man produced CSAM himself with, and here's the thing, like, to preface, they don't mention who the minor is to this man. So we don't know if this is a familial thing or if this was, somebody's, a friend's kid or what, but they don't mention that. So it says that according to court documents, Wesley Chambers, he abused and produced the CSAM content. Law enforcement found more than 200 explicit videos and photographs of the said, minor on his cell phone, and more than 20,000 photographs and 2,500 videos of this going on of this particular minor and other minors, right? That's a lot. 20,000 photographs, 2,500 videos. That is a lot of content. Okay. I've had my cell phone, my iPhone, for years. I mean, I want to say, I don't know, it's been years. At least 5 years, maybe more, maybe 4 years, something like that. And in the 4 years that I've had my phone, it's accumulated like 30,000 pictures and screenshots, right? So that's years worth of content capture. This guy had 20,000 photographs and 2,500 videos. That is years worth. I want you to just think about that, okay? So he captured all of this abuse on his cell phone. Listen to this right here. Chambers pleaded guilty to 2 counts of exploiting the child and 1 count of possessing the material depicting CSAM. As part of the plea agreement, the defendant also admitted to accessing the CSAM on the dark web, including hurtcore sites. Now, if you don't know what the dark web is, it's not the regular internet where you can go to like www.website.com. It's layered. It has security layers, and security is like you got to jump through hoops to get to this portion of the internet. I think there's like certain software. I've never accessed the dark web, so I don't know for sure, but I know that there's like this added layer of hoop jumping and security to get there. All right. So this guy would access the dark web and he would go to these hurtcore sites. So then it just continues into, the formalities of who made the investigation and the departments and things like this. But this is huge right here. This green highlighted portion of this article is huge. And, it just goes by so quick. It's just, we read this literature and it's like, that's it. But this is very, very layered hurtcore. So not only, it's not to minimize all the other things that he had. That's abuse. Abuse is abuse. But this guy was also on top of, I want you to understand what's going on here. On top of possessing this CSAM material, he was also interested in the minors, in the children getting hurt, and he took enjoyment out of that. Okay. Now, this is just from Wikipedia. I'm just going to read this definition for those of you who don't know. Hurtcore is a portmanteau of words hardcore and hurt, and it's a name given to particularly extreme form of, I don't like this particular word right here, the CP. I don't like that at all. I don't think that exists. I know that sometimes I will make the mistake of overlooking or working too quick in the daily traffic to post headlines. And unfortunately, that's just a mainstream word that's used in court, in law enforcement. And I think that people really need to strive to use the CSAM word, child, exploitation material, because it actually says what it is. These children are not making a film, they're not agreeing to film. They can't consent to this type of film. They are forced and exploited and, taken advantage of. And so I don't believe that this word should even exist. But anyway, so it's hardcore and hurt, and given a particular extreme form of CSAM, usually involving degrading violence, bodily harm, and torture relating to the abuse. Okay. So that's why this is such a big deal, because again, this doesn't even have a mugshot. This doesn't, usually the DOJ press releases don't. When this happens, when I find a story like this on the DOJ website, I'll typically Google the name of the guy or the person, the perpetrator, and see if maybe there's any local reports that did obtain a mugshot of the person, and I will post it because I think that that's important, especially nowadays. And this is going to be a completely different topic, but nowadays, all of these district judges, local judges, are giving these really light bonds and light sentences, and that's been a problem But this is a big problem because these predators are getting off really, really, really easy. And, they're just released onto our streets in your local neighborhoods. And so it's important to post their picture when it is available. Unfortunately, this is not available. This guy's picture is not. Actually, this guy's picture is available. Give me 1 second. Okay. And images. There he goes. He's right there. Yeah, the daily traffic hit made the images. That's my account right there, the daily traffic. So if you guys are interested in those types of headlines, do follow it on Instagram, Facebook, and X. So this is the guy right here, Wesley Chambers, who did all that. Okay, so his mugshot is, but this is what I'm talking about. It's usually only available within local news, unfortunately, and they won't even show his picture here. I don't know why they won't show it. So anyway, let's move on. So the reason why I'm starting out with this case is because we were talking about this 7 arrested in Bibb County in Alabama. And these 7 adults, if you guys are not aware of this story, which I think you should be, because this is a monumental story of abuse. So 7 adults in Bibb County, Alabama, they basically had 10 kids, some of which were their own kids or family, and they would exploit these kids basically to other adults, and they would sell them off $200 for a certain allotted amount of time. And yeah, and it was very hurtcore, the details that are attached to this story. Just to give you an idea of what went on, things like tying them down, things like, recording these, photographing these things. There were certain shock devices, animal shock devices that were used. Yes, not on the adults, but yes, the whole thing, the whole ordeal. A big deal that I also feel is compounding on cases like this is the fact that they were also abusing animals in the midst of these environments and these scenes. So you can already tell what kind of decayed moral, psychology these people possessed. I mean, it's dark. This is dark. Okay. So that's what was going on. My point here being is that these 2 headlines, they were actually reported the same day. The DOJ reported the Colorado man, and this was reported on the 23rd, I believe, Wednesday, the 23rd. And that's important because, again, people are so deprived and they are pushing the bar to such an extent in their sexual gratification that they have to go to this deep end of not, and again, I'm not minimizing just, the CSAM or anything like that. I'm saying that people are surpassing that. I believe it was a sheriff that was quoted in this whole case, and he was quoted saying that, I'm going to paraphrase, but he said that, God's mercy and forgiveness is boundless. But if there was a bound, if there was a limit, I believe that this would be it. And I feel the same way. I mean, this is just in my human nature. This is so unforgivable. So unforgivable. All right. So in saying that, there are 2 cases that were oriented around hurting children for the entertainment and the pleasure of adults. And I just think that is, just telling of our times. So with that being said, here is an update on the Bibb County situation. So It says here on this headline, former teacher raised concerns a year before Alabama bunker, case surfaced. So this teacher calls into the station, is talking to this journalist, and basically this teacher was like, "Hey, I reported signs of this like a year ago, and nothing really came about it until recently." And so I'm gonna actually let her speak for herself, but we'll pause and give some commentary.
Now to continuing coverage of the Bibb County child sex abuse case involving 10 young victims. A former teacher now says she raised red flags about one of those children nearly a year before the case surfaced. ABC 3340's Gracie Johnson spoke with her today.
I just feel like it should have been looked into more.
A former Bibb County teacher asked us not to identify her, but says she recognized something wasn't right with a child believed to be one of 10 victims in a Bibb County sex abuse case. It was the 2023-24 school year, and she says one of her students stood out for all the wrong reasons.
She was in my class, and she was just very delayed developmentally, and there could be billions of reasons, but now with all this coming out, it's kind of like that's probably why.
The teacher says school staff reported the child's condition more than once to school administrators.
It was multiple times. No, it never really got better.
The teacher tells me that reports are typically made directly to the school counselor, who would then contact necessary external agencies. Investigators say at least 10 children were drugged and abused in an underground bunker. 7 adults now behind bars and facing a long list of charges, including rape, human trafficking, and kidnapping. Our anonymous teacher says the reports she made to school administrators did not capture the full extent of what investigators have now allegedly uncovered.
Knowing now that they were drugged and stuff, that had a lot to do with where she is academically.
Law enforcement says this major case wasn't referred to them by DHR until February 2025.
I was maybe not shocked, just even more saddened that nothing happened back then, was looked into far enough for it to be stopped back then, and it's just been ongoing.
I reached out to Alabama DHR regarding these claims, and they responded saying the Alabama Department of Human Resources is bound by state confidentiality laws and cannot comment. Gracie Johnson, ABC 3340 News.
We also reached out to Bibb County Schools. As of news time, we have not yet heard back from them.
Interesting, because that's also curious as well, because why didn't the school, if the teacher reported, because teachers, as you guys know, are mandatory reporters. So in other words, if a teacher notices something about the child in their class, they come to class dirty consecutively, they are skinny, or bad hygiene, like they're not given baths or taking baths, then they're by law, by mandate, they have to report that. And so the teacher sounds like she reported it as soon as she could conceive what could have been going on at home, and nobody did anything about it. And that is curious to me, that if she did report this a year ago, what part of the system failed that kid to not look into it, or to not take this step a lot sooner. So anyway, that is the update on the whole deal, and I just had to give you guys some insight in the headlines, what's going on, and how certain things are happening a lot more often. I mean, again, those two stories were reported on the same day. The Colorado guy, Wesley Chambers, going into the dark web and searching that, horrible content. I mean, how can you even take pleasure, you become entertained with hurting kids? I don't understand how, one's mind can be so decayed to the extent where this is what you take pleasure in. And then not only that, you have 7 adults that exemplify this very thing going on, in our culture, where they have to get some sort of gratification from doing the same thing, hurting kids, and they were doing that. They weren't just committing the horrendous acts. They were torturing these kids, and they were doing it out of pleasure and getting gratification from that. And, you know, again, it's just showing you the dark trend of what is going on, and that people have absolutely no shame, you know, up until it becomes a headline. So anyway, I thought I'd share that with you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.